Claver here, and in today's video, we're diving into the imminent potential price increase for XRP based on the recent ETFs applications by Bitwise and Canary Capital. With these heavy hitters entering the game, we could be on the brink of a huge price move for XRP, so let's break it down in this video. If you haven't yet, please like, subscribe, and we'll get into the action. First off, let's talk about why these ETFs are such a big deal. Bitwise and Canary Capital have both filed for spot XRP ETFs. So what's the significance? Institutional capital, period. ETFs make it easier for big money flows to move into assets like XRP. We've already seen this with Bitcoin. So once they get approved, we could see billions enter the market very quickly. Now let's think about it. When institutional investors buy, they do it at scale. They aren't just buying a couple $1,000s here and $1,000 there. They're going to be buying in the billions. At least that's what we've seen with Bitcoin. So that kind of volume can really drive some significant price pressure. It took nearly a decade of regulatory battles to get the first Bitcoin ETF, but once it was finally approved in January of this year, Bitcoin's price went up to all-time high even before the halving. So BlackRock is a big mover in that space, and I think maybe there's a potential that we could see BlackRock use the trust that was filed last year in Delaware in November and stand up their own XRP ETF very quickly if we did see the S1s approved by the SEC. So what can we learn from Bitcoin? Well, the timeline for approval is uncertain, but once XRP ETFs get the green light from the SEC, we could see a very similar surge to price, just like they did for Bitcoin. I think it could happen even faster for XRP. The SEC has been more open to digital assets, even though they have been issuing Wells notices and are in constant litigation with exchanges and other platforms, saying that the assets they are selling are securities or potentially securities and not really giving clear guidance on that. But we know for a fact, because of the case between the SEC and Ripple, that XRP is not a security in and of itself. So because of that, I think that we could see approval of the S1s by the SEC faster. Now, we did get an appeal from them in the Ripple case here recently, and then the cross appeal from Ripple. So that still doesn't allow them to come after the ruling for XRP though. And so because of that, I think that they would still be obligated to approve that S1, even if that lawsuit drags out. So with XRP already being positioned as a settlement currency for financial institutions, combined with the fact that ETFs would have huge inflows, we're looking at a perfect storm for price appreciation. Now, let's talk about the timing. While ETFs take time for approval, institutional investors are known to front-run the market, right? So when we saw that trust had been set up by BlackRock, the iShares trust, we saw a spike in XRP the same day. It was like 10% very quickly before Bloomberg came out and said that, no, that wasn't real. I think we could see that again. If we saw momentum or something filed from BlackRock, I think you would see a huge move of liquidity and people trying to front run the approval of the S1s. So that means they can start buying XRP before the ETFs are even approved. And the institutions would want to do that because it's a spot ETF. They would want to accumulate the asset before the significant price move happened, right? So not to say they don't already hold some XRP, but I think they would have to buy what was left on the market in order to support these products. So it's not just about waiting for the ETF approval. The window for price increase could start sooner as institutions position themselves for what's coming. We've already seen Grayscale also launch their XRP trust. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities that we could see price appreciation from these institutions even before these products are launched. Now, another consideration that could continue to drive price appreciation, even on the other side of these institutions stepping behind it, would be Project Ion. This isn't something that's really been discussed at scale by a lot of people since 2022, and it was a major initiative by the Depository Trust and Clearinghouse or Corporation, the DTCC, and it aimed to transform the U.S. stock market and the settlement system behind it. So most people don't know that there's clearinghouses and brokers, and settling stocks between the two right now takes up to 1 day. It's T+1. May 28th this year, I believe they moved over to T+1, and that allowed for the potential to use a digital asset for instant settlement of those stocks. So, but what does that have to do with XRP, right? And what would cause a need for instant settlement on the back end of the stock market? Seems to be working fine now. Why would they go ahead and move that in? Well, many experts like Jim Rickards have pointed out that we are very close to a credit crisis. If there were a credit crisis to take place, you would need instant settlement on the back end of the stock market, basically to save the day in that situation. So for Project Ion to achieve instant settlement scale, it would require massive amounts of liquidity to move that value efficiently. And that value, you guessed it, would have to be in XRP. By moving institutional capital into XRP, using the ETFs, firms like BlackRock, if they file one, and Bitwise, enough liquidity could be generated in XRP to support the back-end settlement system and be the settlement layer for Project Ion. So with XRP already positioned as a leading solution for international remittance and cross-border transactions, it has the infrastructure needed for real-time settlement. The inflows of the institutional capital would further strengthen XRP's liquidity, making it the go-to prime candidate for Project Ion to settle the stock market real-time. Now, what type of price? Because I know that's going to be the question that everybody asks on this. So first, you need the institutional inflows, right? Second, XRP would have to get integrated by Project Ion, which that would cause the price to soar. So because of the way it's positioned, let's look at the math. The US stock market alone handles trillions in daily transaction volumes. To put it in perspective, it's estimated that the DTCC settles $1.7 quadrillion annually, which that breaks down to about $6.6 trillion in daily settlement volume. So if XRP was used as the primary settlement layer between brokers and clearinghouses, like we talked about, the liquidity required to move that much value would be huge. There's currently about 50 billion XRP on the open market. And if all of that XRP was used, which it won't be, to settle that 6.6 trillion in daily volumes, the math becomes very simple. You would look at it, you work it out, divide it, you have $132 XRP. Okay, that's just the math there. So that's a 200% increase from today's, well, more than a 200% increase from today's price levels. But it gives us an idea of the asset's potential as more capital flows into the system and moves on to the network. So realistically, I think that maybe only a tenth of what XRP exists in the open market could be used to facilitate those payment flows. And if you do the math there, and maybe you do have some XRP used multiple times a day to be able to settle those transactions, right? You're still looking at like a 4-figure XRP, like $1,000+ to be able to facilitate that much liquidity and the settlement between the brokers and the clearinghouses. And then you've also got Swift and a lot of the other applications that Ripple and some other companies are going after utilizing the asset. So once enough liquidity is in there, I think you're going to see a lot of these other potential use cases come online. With institutional capital from the ETFs coupled with XRP's potential use of settling Project Ion in the back end of the stock market, the demand for XRP would increase exponentially. It would hockey stick. It would go vertical, right? So if XRP becomes the preferred settlement asset for both international remittance and stock transactions, people would lose their minds if this were to roll out. So tell me in the comments below, what do you think? Is this a possibility? Am I crazy? Am I pie in the sky dreaming? You know, let me know what you think. And I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you on the next one.